Elin Jones ydw I, a dwi'n ymgeisydd Plaid Cymru. I'm Elin Jones and I'm the Plaid Cymru candidate for the Ceredigion constituency. I've represented the constituency now in the Senedd over a number of years, and I'm trying, again, putting my name forward for Ceredigion in the Senedd once again. Very keen to be re-elected to continue the work that I've been doing, that have prioritised several areas for Ceredigion over the years. First and foremost for me has always been ensuring that we have good public services in Ceredigion, and in particular in the health and social care sector. And we've seen over the pandemic how important this sector has been, both its workers in social care and also in the NHS. We're very grateful for everything they've done, and we need to reward them appropriately, pay them well enough to continue their work, and train more of them to be working in health and social care. And for me as well, ensuring that we have adequate and good housing for our young people, but for all our people to be able to rent and buy in our communities. And then thirdly, of course, ensuring that our economy is vibrant enough and diverse enough to be giving job opportunities for everybody in this area, and in particular in this case job opportunities for those who may not be able to work full-time or fully occupied in their work, but that there's a diverse job range out there for people who have various abilities to be able to access at any time. So I'm keen to carry on the work for Ceredigion to make sure that I'm there to represent everybody in the county when and if elected. And I look forward to working with everybody who's watching this hustings if I'm elected for the next 5 years. Diolch yn fawr I chi gyd. Thank you very much.
So hello, my name is Lewis-Rowlands and I'm the Welsh Labour candidate for Ceredigion. So hello, fenw i yw Lewis-Rowlands a dwi'n yr ymgeisydd Llafur Cymru, sorry, dros Ceredigion. Just cwbl o bethau amdana i'n gyntaf. Rwy'n 19 mlwydd oed ac rwy'n balch o fod yn siaradwyr i iaith gyntaf Gymraeg. Ces i ei gwleidyddoli cymdeithasol ces i fy kind of addysg gwleidyddiaeth os i roi yn ffyr yna. Dros gweithio efo issues. So rwy'n bod yn gweithio, rwy'n bod yn gweithio yn y trydydd sector am yn cwpl o blynyddoedd, just kind of dim necessarily yn cael ei dalu, ond yn gweithio efo bobl. Rwy'n ffocysu ar pethau i wneud efo pobl ifanc a Democratiaid fel arfer, enghraifft iechyd meddyliol. Rhywbeth pwysig iawn i fi, ond hefyd Pleidlais am 16, roedd yn rhywbeth roedd wedi bod yn kind of champion o am while now. Ond pethau kind of mwy, pethau fel addysg hefyd, addysg am bywyd, newid ein systemau addysg i sicrhau bod nhw'n gweithio nid yn paratoi pobl am gwaith, ond yn paratoi pobl am y bywyd bydd nhw'n byw. Ond hefyd, fel rhywun sydd efo autism, mae rhywbeth fel hawliau pobl anabl yn pwysig iawn i fi. So rwy'n bod yn gwneud llawer o gwaith, i fod yn onest, kind of, yn hwyrach yn fy bywyd, as it were, yn rwy'n 19 mlwydd oed, mae'n ddim yn gwneud sylwyd, ond yn hwyrach yn fy mywyd, rwy'n bod yn gweithio mwy ar pethau i wneud efo pobl efo anabl. A os rwy'n cael ei ethol ar y 6 o Fai, byddai'n hapus iawn i cario ymlaen wneud y pethau yma a llawer mwy a gweithio dros y bobl, bod rwy'n un honno. So just a few things about me. I'm 19 years old and I'm proud to be a first language Welsh speaker. I really became politicised, if you want to call it that, kind of socialised, as it were, through working on issues. So I was working in the volunteering sector for a number of years, and I specifically focused on kind of issues around democracy and issues around young people as well, you know, being both a citizen and a young person myself. So we're talking about things about 16 and things like that, but also things that are really important to me were mental health. As someone who's kind of gone through bad periods in my life myself, mental health is a big, really thing important to me, but also some with autism, the rights of disabled people and working with disabled people to ensure that, you know, services, education, politics is accessible to these people. That's something I've really, that was stuff I've done later on in my life, as it were. That's stuff that I've really focused on and really, really enjoyed, but also an education for life and kind of strengthening our communities. And the real thrust around that is the education stuff. It's, ensuring that we don't just educate young people for work, but we educate them so they're prepared for their life. Because life isn't just work, and we need to stop thinking of life that way. Life's about healthy relationships. Life's about being a full-rounded, well-rounded citizen. And I'd be really proud to carry on this work as an MS if I'm elected on the 6th of May.
So, Cadan, Tomos, I'm the Welsh Liberal Democrat candidate here in this election. I know that we in Ceredigion have been through so much over the past year. It's affected all of us in many different ways, but I think throughout all of it, I think we've learned the real meaning of the word community. And I think I'm one of many that has so much gratitude for the voluntary groups and organisations and charities that have really stepped up to the plate in the last year to help people in our communities get through the tough times that we faced. A little bit about me, I'm proud to have grown up here in Ceredigion. I attended local schools, and I've very much been shaped by our local communities here. I had to leave Ceredigion to find work, just like many young people my age, struggling to find good jobs and an affordable place to live around here. But I dedicated my career to making a difference. That's why many of the roles that I've held have been in the third sector. And I currently work for a charity called Care and Repair Cymru that helps older people live independently in their homes. We really need to foster sustainable local communities here. And I mean sustainable in every sense of the word, not just environmentally, but making sure that we're able to sustain each other. And we will only get there if we work together and harness that spirit that we found during the COVID crisis. I've come back to Ceredigion because I want to give something back to the communities that gave so much to me growing up here, and I hope I'll get the chance to do that if I'm elected in May.
Listen, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak and interview me today. I'm Amanda Jenner, the Welsh Conservative candidate for Ceredigion. I stood here in the 2019 general election and we came second, and I'm standing here again. My background is I grew up in Pembrokeshire. I came to study in Aberystwyth and then went on to become a lawyer in Cardiff, working on medical regulation and health regulation. Then took the decision in 2012 it was to move up to Mid Wales and retrain as a secondary school English teacher. And I also got elected as a county councillor in Mid Wales at the same time. And I absolutely love being a councillor. That's where you get to find out what's really important to people and local issues, work with third sector organisations. And in my role, I chair the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee. I see how cross-party working can work really, really valuable, really well, and how you can get things done when you take sort of the political ping pong out of it. Just to touch on some of my priorities, one of the things I think we really need to do is level up the funding for large rural councils across Wales. Ceredigion has consistently received one of the lowest funding grants from the Welsh Government over years, and that has a knock-on effect to support given to third sector organisations. We've seen councils in the south get increases, and what we absolutely need to do is review the way the funding is calculated to make sure it's fair. We also need to massively tackle housing, and that's important in Ceredigion particularly, and for the sector which you represent. What we also need to see, not only building housing, but also make sure that housing is adaptable and accessible, so that people can stay in their houses for as long as possible. So housing is key, and thanks for inviting me.
Hello. My name is Harry. I'm standing for the Green Party for the Senedd elections in Wales, in the constituency of Ceredigion and the electoral region of Mid and West Wales.
My name's Stephanie Evans. I'm a candidate for Freedom Alliance. I'm not a politician. I'm not politically trained or anything. I'm a wife and mum of 5 children of various ages, from 4 all the way up to 22 years old. I'm a small business owner, just a general everyday person, if you like, that was looking for an alternative to the usual options on voting day, just purely because in my mind it was time for change. And that's basically how I stumbled upon Freedom Alliance, who are all about freedom for the people, human rights, pro-choice, and anti-lockdown, basically, which is purely because of the way it's removing people's human rights and how people are now actually suffering more due to the lockdown than the positives that it created initially. So that's pretty much what we're about, supporting the elderly, small businesses, general everyday people, going for election on behalf of general everyday people.
I think the crux of this is down to consultation and engagement with the different people that this impacts. And I think, unfortunately, we've not seen that happen across the board. So going forward, if safe zones are going to carry on, they can't just be imposed. You need to come and engage with the sectors and the different people with the different needs to make sure that everybody has access, and not just tick a box to engage. I mean meaningful consultation where you let people have their say and share how this is going to impact them, and then that can be balanced with the potential other benefits, and they can mitigate against the problems with access and find a solution. But if you don't do that engagement exercise meaningfully, then you're just excluding a whole load of a category of people that are going to be restricted from accessing, vital shops and services. So consultation is key.
I've had issues with this myself, actually. I suffer with fibromyalgia, so walking distances is not the best thing for me. The safe zones, I think, have discriminated massively against people that can't walk distances and they can't get to local shops, which in turn then is affecting footfall for small businesses as well. I think it's a good idea in principle, but I think there needs to be more access for disabled people to still continue to drive to closer to where they need to get, and have the disabled access that they need at every time of day, even when it's closed off for normal tourists or normal people. I think if you're a blue badge or you've got a disability, you should be able to still drive up through town and get access to where you need to be.
These safe zones are a difficult situation. I think we're seeing councils right across Wales actually trying to introduce some kind of thing like this to try and give people space to walk around our town centres and perhaps give a bit of extra trading space to traders that have been forced to close. But at the same time, particularly in Aberystwyth, but also in other parts of Ceredigion too, we're seeing that people are being shut out of our town centres because they don't have anywhere to park, or the way that things have been designed aren't accessible. And the frustration that I've seen is the county council don't seem to have actually been listening to the concerns that have been raised, both by Lib Dem councillors who represent our towns across Ceredigion, but also by disabled people and the communities themselves who have been trying to use opportunities to feed back and improve the safe zones that are being proposed. So I think the key thing here is listening. I don't think there's a mutual exclusivity between having safe zones and shutting disabled people and people with mobility issues out of our town centres. I think it's possible to get to a place where all of us can access and enjoy our town centres, but it requires listening, real consultation, and working together and actually acting on what you find. And I think if I were elected, I would want to make sure that I can help facilitate some of that dialogue between some of the decision makers in the council and the people who still have concerns despite the fact that it's gone through a badge of revision, to make sure that all of us can enjoy our town centres, whatever our accessibility.
Whereas I'm sure the person who asked that question realises the safe zones were introduced as a result of the pandemic. And I have to say, personally speaking, like a lot of things in the pandemic, it was not thought through properly. I very much strongly suspect there wasn't a single disabled person who was even asked about them. So I'm pleased to say that in the Green Party, all of our policies on disability don't just refer to physical disability, but mental disability and also hidden disabilities. Therefore, the first thing we would like to do is to move from the medical model to a more social model, so that things like impairments, which are fixed by aids, assistive technology or rehabilitation, should actually be done more towards how society views things. So in regard to the safe areas, I would say if there had been a disabled person or a member of the disabled community on the plane to begin with, then the question would not be, what have we done wrong? The question would actually be, can we make things even better than they are at the moment? So in response to that, I would say, if you were able to get a disabled person or disabled group onto the discussion first of all, then the question wouldn't even arise. Thank you.
The safe zones were initially put in place, obviously, to make the town centres in Ceredigion safe places for people in a COVID environment, so that when you're walking around streets and into shops, that you don't feel, if there's a crowd around, you don't feel too close to other people, and therefore by having more room, it feels more secure for COVID purposes, so that the town centres, you're able to share the streets with everybody. Now, of course, the difficulty in that is in reaching the town centres in the first place, so that you're able to park closely enough to get to the various shops that you need to. And therein has been one of the major problems of introducing the safe zones last year. I hope that the County Council has, for this year now, adjusted some of their plans to enable parking for those who have disabled parking or who have some need to be very close to the shops and services that they're going to, that the council has taken on board some of those comments. I certainly know that they have, for example, in Aberystwyth, where some disabled bays were lost on Market Street, that they've now provided more disabled parking in Baker Street, which is equally town centre for the purposes of Aberystwyth. But making sure that the disabled parking voice in particular is heard in this context is very important. I hope that the solutions that the County Council have come up with are better than the ones that were served last year. And of course, we have to remember that this is all in order to make sure that in a COVID context, that everybody who uses our town centres, and we need people to continue to use our town centres, are as safe as possible for this summer.
Really good question. This is a really important issue. If I just flag up one thing that I've been made aware of, Aberystwyth town was made into a safe zone, as we all probably know, but the gradient on the hill is of a very unfriendly nature. So for example, it's a 1 in 20, I think is the exact gradient, and that is actually the maximum allowed for someone who's been pushed on a wheelchair, for someone pushing a wheelchair to be able to do that under British kind of standards. And that's someone who's fit and healthy pushing a person on a wheelchair. If a person using a wheelchair themselves, that's not accessible. That's not an accessible space for them. So there's been real issues around safe zones. Some geographic, obviously, we can't change gradients without a lot of bulldozing work. But there are ways that could be made accessible. And what this needs is a commissioner for disabled people. It needs a commissioner who are working on things like this. What it needs is what Welsh Labour are promising, which is to sign up to the UN Charter of the Rights of the Disabled People, and so they can really work on these issues, and so that when the advocacy services are then in place, things like this are advocated for. It's advocated for at a national level to the Welsh Government, but also advocated for at a local level, as it were, to town councils and to kind of borough county councils as well. So I'd say that's a really, real important thing, but also in terms of advocacy, it's discussing with people in these communities, people with disabilities, people with impairments, but discussing these things with them, and robust consultation services, which is something that Welsh Labour have been working on kind of in a kind of political policy sense through the Social Partnership Act. But also it's about ensuring that our procedures, our consultation work is a lot more robust to ensure that issues like this are flagged up and can then be addressed before they become a problem. So mae'n cwestiwn dda iawn, a jyst I kind of codi un peth rwy'n deall. So yn Aberystwyth, cael Aberystwyth mewn i ardal saff, ond mae'r gradient sydd ar y hyn 1 mewn 20, a mae'r regulations o gwmpas pobl yn cael ei gythio mewn kind of wheelchair, yn meddwl fod dyna'r gradient uchaf, all rhywun sydd yn kind of iachus iawn ac yn gallu wneud hynna. So efo person mewn wheelchair ddim yn gallu wneud hynna ei hunain. Ond mae hwnna'n kind of mater daearyddol, ni allai newid hwnna heb kind of bulldozer mas. Ond beth ti'n gallu newid? Ti'n gallu newid y prosesau yma, trwy newid sut ti'n gweithio efo pobl. Dyna beth mae Llafur Gymru yn y ddewi, a hefyd ni wedi bod yn gwneud hon dros y 5 mlynedd diwethaf. Os ni'n edrych ar enghraifft ar y Social Partnership Act, dwi ddim yn gwybod hwnna'n Cymraeg yn blin iawn, ond os ni'n edrych ar y Social Partnership Act, be ni'n gweld yw fod ni'n creu ffyrdd rhwydraeth o gweithio efo bobl sydd yn dod â llawer o pethau gwahanol mewn, ond allwn ni hefyd, fel y mae Llafur Cymru yn ei adew, allwn ni hefyd y rwyddo'r UN Disabled People's Charter, UN Charter of Disabled People's Rights, ti'n bach yn mouthful fan'na, ond beth mae hwnna'n sicrhau wedyn yw bod ni'n dechrau cael robust pethau mewn ei le i sicrhau bod allwn ni wedyn trafod efo pobl, allwn ni redeg consultations efo pobl sydd yn gweithio, sydd nid jyst yn rubber stamp, ond yn gweithio ac yn sicrhau all pobl, pwy bynnag nhw yn, codi eu llais a gwybod bydd y llais yna'n cael ei glywed, ac wedyn bod os mae yna problemau ar lefel gwlad, neu ar lefel lleol, ar lefel lleol, allwn ni gweithio wedyn i sicrhau bod y problemau yna ddim yn dod problemau, a bod nhw'n dod mas a nhw'n gallu datrys cyn i nhw ddod yn problem i bobl sydd yn dioddef o hwnna.
Again, another tricky issue, and it seems like one of these things that never goes away. You know, we've been talking for as long as I've been involved in politics, even before then, so over 10 years, about needing to closer integrate health and social care, and we've never seemed to have quite got there. And I think the key thing that we need to do is actually get rid of perhaps some of the postcode lotteries that we have in the social care system as a result of the fact that it's fragmented and perhaps under councils for some bits and in private hands for others, and actually create a properly national care system that is on a par with our health system, that is set up from the beginning to work together, and that actually properly remunerates and thanks our care workers with a decent wage, with the real living wage, and through that, having that national strategic focus, I think you then start to integrate some of these problems, making sure that we're innovating as well, particularly in a rural area like ours, because care across such a sparse area presents its own challenges, but we need to make sure that we're using the wealth of knowledge in the third sector. As I said, I work for Care and Repair Cymru, there's a lot of knowledge there, but I know there are other charities and organisations as well that have that knowledge, and making sure that we're bringing all that together to create the best service that we can, because every minute that we don't do that, it's only older people right across Ceredigion that are suffering and losing out from things falling through the gaps, services not working properly together, and it just needs a bit of leadership from the top and something national, strategic to take that forward, I think.
Now, this I can answer from the heart. I am a carer. I have been a carer for my grandparents since the millennium. And as I'm sure you and the person who's asked that question has realised, this pandemic has seen carers hailed as heroes, but quite frankly treated like mud. And I should know, I lost my grandfather to this pandemic. He died 48 hours after my grandparents' 70th wedding anniversary. So whilst I understand that the care close to home principle is sound in principle, actually doing it when you are the person who is doing the caring it feels like hitting your head against a brick wall. Every single time I wrote to the council saying, I'm awfully sorry to bother you, but I need this, that and the other, the response I got back was, I'm sorry, Ceredigion does not provide that resource. I have found from my own personal experiences that it takes for someone to be absolutely at their bottom ebb, their worst level possible, before the council even considers starting to move things. When I said I'm awfully sorry in April of 2020, but this lockdown is affecting me such a way I need respite, I was told, sorry. It wasn't until I said, I'm awfully sorry, council, but if I don't get respite, I might do something silly. And that something silly was phoning the police and asking, how do I self-section myself? It shouldn't have to come to that. If I was in the Senedd, I would make sure that the Welsh Government gave every council a fair level of funding for resources so that care from home could actually work. Thank you.
Well, one of the big things for Plaid Cymru in this election is to propose that the next Welsh Government has to fully integrate health and social care and to make all of care free at the point of need. Now, there needs to be a job of work to do that. We'd be setting up a commission to see how that would need to be paid for. It might need to be paid for by a levy or some form of taxation that care and elderly care in particular then becomes free at the point of need. So integration of the service so that people aren't passed from one to the other, from health to social care, and then the two authorities end up arguing as to who pays for what. So integration will help with that. And in the context of Ceredigion, that will mean that both Bronglai, some of the community hospitals, various care associations that work in across the third sector are able to work for far more seamlessly than they have been able to do previously. And that's the aspiration, is to break down the barriers between health and social care. They've been there since the 1940s when the great social care and NHS were set up as a result of coming out of the war era. And now we need to finally integrate these services and also ensure that those people who work in these services are well enough paid and recompensed for the fabulous work that they do. In the care sector in particular, we need to be able to be supporting our care workers with adequate pay so that they carry on in their work. So there's a lot of work to do in this, and Plaid Cymru is very keen to create a better service and to learn from this pandemic, especially as to how we can create a better service for Ceredigion people. Diolch yn fawr.
I think we need better communication and connections across the community with staff in actually directly in the NHS and just general stay-at-home carers and you know, family, caring for family. I think there needs to be a better connection between the two, which can help a lot of people, especially people staying at home to care for their elderly relatives and things. I think we could do more like community groups where people feel they can come together with people of their own ages and they can chat and discuss options, ways of helping each other, and then have some sort of main hub where they can connect to for any extra information they need, especially where mental health is concerned. I think this would be a massive benefit if you've got some sort of meetup where the age groups, same age groups could meet together. So, you know, the 18 to 22-year-olds or even younger pupils, but that they've all got this main hub where they can access each other and professional information if they need it. And then through that, you can connect then your actual nurses and healthcares in the community all up around this main hub, and where people are helping each other, I think is a massive thing. If more people can help each other, it will ease the pressures on the healthcare service. So if we give them the aids to be able to do that, then I think we'll be able to make progress a lot quicker.
Another very good question. I think the first thing that we need to do is explore kind of blending social care into the NHS. So however we phrase that, there's a lot of different ways of phrasing that, but the key point is healthcare, in this case social care, being free at the point of use for everyone forever. That is what's key here, I think. And in doing that, a lot of other things come off that in terms of kind of statutory duty to consult people, things like that. So we've been trying to do this for a while. This has been something that we've been trying to nail for a while. But we've been trying to do it as a UK-wide approach. But what has been clear now is, what I think should have been clear before is that the austerity government in Westminster is not interested in kind of improving people's lives. So we need to do it here in Wales. We need to do a different approach here in Wales, like we did with the EMA, like we did with free prescriptions. We need to have a clear red water and do it here in Wales properly for Welsh people. So that is what Welsh Labour are promising. Is that if the UK government don't step up to the plate and deliver for Wales, then we will do that, and we will explore melding social care into the NHS, or again, however you want to phrase that, basically making it free at the point of use, so that people can get better services, and that obviously impacts people in Hywel as well. And what we've also seen is that over the past 5 years, Welsh Labour has capped in-home care expenses to £100. A lot of people already pay a lot less than that due to income issues, but it's capped at £100. That is one of the best kind of numbers in Wales, in the UK, sorry, and we want to keep it that way. These services are vital, whether they be for vulnerable people in our communities, whether they be for older people, whether they be for people with learning difficulties, whoever they be for. These services are vital for those people, and it's about ensuring that those services can be accessed at any point by anyone, whenever they need it. So just mae'n cwestiwn da iawn, ar kind of prif peth allan ni wneud I sicrhau bod hyn yn gweithio yw roi kind of systemau iechyd cymdeithasol I fewn i'r gig. A mae pobl yn kind of defnyddio termau gwahanol amdano hyn, ond I fi, I Llafur Gymru, beth mae hwnna'n meddwl yw sicrhau fod gofal cymdeithasol yn am ddim I pwy bynnag sy'n eisiau fe, pryd bynnag nhw eisiau fe. Dyna beth sydd y hanfodol o'n hyn, ond hefyd mae dod efo kind of rai pethau sydd yn mynd efo hynna hefyd, enghraifft angenrheidiad I kind of consult efo pobl, fel roedd ni'n trafod tro diwethaf. Mae'n ddod efo pethau arall efo fe hefyd sydd yn pwysig iawn. Ond beth mae Llafur Cymru, mae Llafur Cymru wedi bod yn trio wneud hyn am blynyddoedd, model dros y Deyrnas Unedig, ond beth mae'n clir yw fod Llywodraeth Llymder yn San Steffan dim wir eisiau helpu bobl. So ni angen wneud hwnna yng Nghymru am bobl Gymru, a dyna beth mae Llafur Cymru yn y ddewi yw, os nad yw rhywbeth yn digwydd, os nad yw'r Llywodraeth San Steffan yn sefyll lan yn wneud rhywbeth, byddwn ni'n wneud am yng Nghymru dros y bobl Gymreig.
Yeah, this is a really valid question that I probably can't answer in 2 minutes because it's huge. If we're looking at the long-term picture, then absolutely we need to be looking at integrating health and social care, but that's not going to happen overnight. So what we need to do in the short term is make sure that we're funding our local health board and our local council fairly, because they operate those services. And as I said in my intro, at the moment, Ceredigion, in my view, doesn't get fair funding, and the Welsh Government doesn't appreciate that it costs more to deliver services in rural areas. It takes more time for a social worker to get from A to B in Ceredigion than it does in Cardiff. So you need more social workers, so it's more expensive. Keeping people closer to home is so important, and there is huge opportunity here if we can look at it holistically. We're seeing technology being introduced so that people can stay in their own homes for longer, and their family can check that they've got out of bed today and they've turned their oven on today and their temperature in their house is not fluctuating, and then if something goes awry they can go and check that they're okay. We have to think creatively and be ambitious about how we provide care. There's no one-stop shop though. It's not just going to be technology, it's having the right mix for Ceredigion. And we've seen problems with residential care homes being closed, again, where consultation didn't reflect local view. So it's such a holistic image, and one that is very difficult to answer in 2 minutes, but I hope I've touched on what you need there.
Our policy on this is quite clear. We need to shift the balance of economic power from individuals, so in favour of individuals, and away from large-scale remote private operations. And the third sector is one of these examples. Therefore, if I'm elected to the Senedd, I would campaign for the following things: a universal basic income, meaning that I, as a carer, wouldn't have to survive on as little as 40 pence an hour. We would put through policies to support the household as an important centre of economic activity. Things like payday loans, which have been for too long legitimised loan sharking, would be rejected under our policies. Interest rates on the lending of money would be at reasonable rates compared to that of the Bank of England. We would endorse and actively promote credit unions and community banks like Bank Cambria, and we would make sure that everything was changed, changing planning and building regulations to encourage home help-based enterprises, providing grants for reskilling and for the necessary tools and technology necessary for home-based enterprises. If you give people in their own home the power to look after themselves, and in the third sector, that's exactly what's going on, we say they should be able to have it. There shouldn't be any obstacles. They know themselves what is best for themselves. And if that means that they can do their own things in their own home, then so be it. Thank you.
Well, this is kind of where the party's at with everything. We want to make sure there's no lockdowns, so that people do feel secure enough to go out there and get their businesses running and put things back in place and buy stock in without having the fear that they're going to be out of pocket because they could be locked down again at any moment. I've been working a great deal with where I've got two of my businesses situated, one in Aberystwyth, one in Aberaeron, and creating a community amongst the businesses, which in turn then feeds through to customers and the general public, and just trying to get a family feel of everybody working together to help each other. And I think one way of doing that is to guarantee people that there won't be any more lockdowns and that we can come together as communities and talk together freely without worrying about what the current COVID rules and regulations are or what's going to be happening next week. I think they need that reassurance that we can move forward and we're not going to go backwards.
Brilliant question. I'll just start off by saying on my leaflets, it says Dylan Lewis-Rowlands for strong local communities, because that's what matters to me, is communities. Where I grew up, we had a decent sense of community. People in the community helped me out and made me feel somewhat welcome. And we need that across Wales. We need that across Ceredigion and across Wales. We need to ensure that communities lie at the heart of whatever policy we go for, whether that be mental health policy, and ensuring that local services like the ones the CAVO help advocate for are put at the heart of our communities and are given the funding they need to ensure that they can do the kind of the services that they need for people, because local people know local issues, and that is key. You know, CAMS has its place, statutory services have their place, but at the end of the day, some of the most effective work that I've ever seen take place has been through local services, local people setting, saying this is a problem, let's do something about it. So that is really, really key, and that's what we are promising after the pandemic's over. And to start, and when we're starting, we've already seen some of the stuff that the support that Welsh Labour provided for businesses and for services. For example, we're going to ramp this up. We're going to continue to ensure that support is made available when it's needed. But also we have many other policies about moving Wales forward. So, for example, if I just take one that I am very, very proud of, it's our young person's guarantee. And what this guarantee says is that by the end of the Senedd term, the next Senedd term, that is, every 16 to 25-year-old will be given an offer of work, education, or training. That is bold, radical thinking, and that is the type of thing that we need to be doing. And what that ensures is that people who have missed out on opportunities, whether that be kind of job opportunities, education opportunities, are given the chance to have those opportunities after coronavirus. But it also ensures that everyone can take part in a thriving, dynamic Wales And that's really what we need to see after coronavirus, is a thriving, dynamic, fairer Wales. That is key. So mae Llafur Cymru yn gweithio ar hon kind of yn barod. So ni wedi bod yn rhoi'r cefnogaeth, mae busnesau, mae pethau, mae ein gwasanaethau cymdeithasol angen. Ni wedi bod yn rhoi'r cefnogaeth yna yn barod, a byddwn ni'n cael ymlaen wneud yna. Ond hefyd byddwn ni'n gwneud yn gwell, oherwydd mae allan ni troi'r amser yn wneud, mae all pob llywodraeth troi'r amser yn wneud yn gwell. So un peth byddai eisiau siarad yn gyflym iawn amdano yw ein garanti, ein sicrhad am pobl ifanc. A beth mae hwn yn meddwl yw bod erbyn y diwedd y tymor Senedd nesaf, bydd pob person rhwng yr oedran 16 mlwydd oed a 5 ar 20 mlwydd oed yn gallu cael siawns i cael gwaith neu addysg neu hyfforddiant nhw eisiau neu nhw angen. A mae hwn yn helpu, mae'n un peth sydd yn helpu ar adferiad ar ôl y pandemig, ond mae llawer arall allu wneud. Mae gen i ddim wedi cael fund nawr, mae'n diflannu o meddwl fi, ond ni'n cael Economic Resilience Fund hefyd, sydd yn sicrhau fod ni'n cymunedau lleol, hefyd dyna beth sy'n pwysig i fi, ar cymunedau lleol ar canol beth ni'n angen wneud, bod ein cymunedau yn gallu gweithio ac yn gallu fod yn kind of sicr yn ei dyfodol cyn iddyn nhw, a wedyn, pan nhw'n wedyn yn sicr am ei dyfodol, allan nhw wedyn gweithio am y dyfodol a dechrau gwella i sicrhau fod gen i Cymru sydd yn tecach ac yn gwell ar ôl y pandemig.
Yeah, again, it's an intricate one, isn't it? Because there's lots of different types of organisations, and it does again come down to fair funding, so that there's grants available where they need to be, and that there's the man support and the resource support for all of these different organisations. One thing that I'm interested in is the ability of communities to bid for new assets as and when they come about, and I think that's something that the Welsh Conservatives would like to explore, and I can see how that could work really well with third sector organisations. We've seen it in parts of Wales where communities have bid to take on day centres, for example, but that's got to come from the community drive and the local people knowing what is best for their local area, rather than Welsh Government coming in and saying this is what's going to happen here. It's got to be a bottom-up approach in my view. But again, it's one that is so vital, isn't it? And actually what we've seen during the pandemic is third sector organisations massively provide vital and such important support to communities, and that's really shown that there's a huge community spirit, and we don't want to, that's a positive thing that's come out of the pandemic, and I hope that can be safeguarded and used going forward.
I think that we've seen that COVID and how COVID has been dealt with in Wales has on the whole worked as a team effort, both between Welsh Government and local authorities and with the health service as well. But as we kind of build where we're going next and learning some of the useful lessons that we've learned out of COVID, as well as the difficult issues that we've had to deal with, then we need to make sure that everybody feels included in the decision making along this. I tend to feel that the local authority and a small local authority like Ceredigion has worked really well in the context of dealing with this pandemic. Ceredigion Council has been under quite significant threat over the years for being too small, but I think we've learned that small is beautiful in the context of dealing with this pandemic. And I would hope that the County Council then, as it thinks about how we move Ceredigion to beyond COVID, how we learn the lessons, that it does so in discussing with all the third sector organisations who've also done amazing work during this this year of pandemic in supporting so many people that needed to be supported throughout the year, and that everybody works together as a team Ceredigion to ensure that we've laid the foundations to recover from the pandemic, and also to not prepare ourselves for any other pandemics in the future, make sure that we are prepared, but think about how we learn the lessons and how we build a more resilient future for all our people. And as a small community, a rural community in West Wales, I think we can do that, but we can only do it if we all work together.
This is absolutely vital, and you know, our recovery is for both me and for our party is our priority. We're literally saying that we want to put recovery first, because I think you know, so many bad things and tragedies and distress has come out of the COVID crisis. But if one good thing is going to come out of it, I think it needs to be a bit of a reset, perhaps, about how we live our lives, how we view each other and our communities and our social structures around us, and hopefully it will give us the chance to build something better out of it. As I said in my opening, I think, you know, we need to make sure that our local communities are sustainable, are fully connected, that we're making sure that we're not, you know, isolating people and leaving people isolated and lonely within our communities. That is a massive issue within rural areas like Ceredigion. You know, the mental health crisis, which has been exacerbated by COVID, is actually been brewing for quite a while in rural areas, with particularly older people, but many others as well, feeling isolated in parts of Ceredigion without access to services or access to a community nearby. So I think it's making sure that we're investing in that sustainability of our communities, making sure that we've got the infrastructure, the public transport, the community assets in place that can sustain a community and that can make people feel at home and feel like they belong with each other. And you know, there are great examples of that across the place, and there are great examples of community-led initiatives. I think of like the Clywed cooperative shop in Rhyddfrydol, for example. You know, that has really created a sense of community there and is very, very well supported. But you know, we can't just keep going with isolated examples. We need to have a bit of leadership to make sure that we're thinking properly about every corner of our county. You know, what are the needs of the people that are living there? How can we improve things, and how can we make sure that people in these communities feel supported and feel like they belong here?
So I just kind of meddwl on a question Olaf hynny. If I just kind of think about that last question and kind of the pandemic, I think what it's shown is the inequalities that still exist here in Wales. And kind of after the pandemic, there's always this talk of building back better, but I don't think that's necessarily what's needed. I think what's needed is building back fairer. I think that's what's key after coronavirus, because that, you know, we see that inequality, for example, economic inequality, is a massive driver of the suppression of our economy, let alone the fact that it kills people day by day, you know, through hunger, through all these things. So we really need to ensure that Wales is built back fairer. And Welsh Labour is the only party that is committed to this and has track record in doing this. For example, if I just talk about EMA, you know, I come from a poor background myself. I'm proud to admit I come from a working class family, so something I'm very kind of proud of. And I had access to EMA, and that kept me in my sixth form education. That kept me in my sixth form education. That then meant I got on to do. I was able to go on and do university. You know, there's a real difference we've done here in Wales. That's scrapped in England. We kept it here in Wales. So if you truly believe that Wales needs to be built back fairer, there's only one person you should vote for, and that's Welsh Labour. So yeah, just kind of meddwl am a question olaf, kind of yr adferiad ar ôl coronavirus. A, you know, beth sydd wir wedi ddod mas o'r pandemig yw'r anhawsterau a'r anghyfiawnder. Oedd yn ein cymdeithas yn barod, ni angen bod yn ymwybodol, nid oedd y coronavirus wedi achosi y pethau yma, ond roedd nhw yna'n barod yn ein cymdeithas. So beth ni angen sicrhau, nid wedi bod llawer o siarad o adeiladu nôl yn gwell, a roedd ddim yn meddwl bod hynna beth sy'n allweddol, ond rwy'n meddwl bod yn allweddol fod ni'n adeiladu nôl yn tecach. Dyna beth sydd yn allweddol i fi. Hefyd, jyst i kind of defnyddio un esiampl o anghyfiawnder economaidd. beth ni'n gweld yw bod anghyfiawnder economaidd yn cael llawer o kind of effeithiau ar ein economi sydd wedyn yn kind of dirwasgu ar ein economi, ond mwy na hynny, mae pobl yn marw dydd i dydd oherwydd anghyfiawnder economaidd, oherwydd yr anghyfiawnder sydd yn byw sydd yn bodoli yn ein cymdeithas. Felly ni angen sicrhau bod hynny'n cael ei dylistrio, gallwn ni gweithio i sicrhau Cymru tegach. A'r unig blaid all wneud hynny yw'r Plaid Llafur. Mae gen i'r track record yn wneud hynny, a mae gen i'r eisoes i wneud am y dyfodol hefyd. Jyst i defnyddio un enghraifft yw'r LCA. Rwy'n falch o fod o'r teulu gweithiol. A roedd yr LCA wedi cadw fi mewn addysg. Mae hwnna ddim yn bodoli mewn Lloegr. So beth ti angen sicrhau yw, os ti eisiau Cymru sy'n teco, os ti eisiau Cymru sy'n gweithio am y mwyafrif, mae dim ond un blaid gallu pleidleisio dros, a mae hwnna'n y Plaid Llafur.
Felly, diolch yn fawr am y cyfle i gael siarad â chi gyd heddi, i fod yn o beth. Thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions today, even though it's remotely. We're all getting too used to this remote working. I look forward to seeing everybody again. I've been canvassing over the last few weeks. I've seen so many people. It's so nice to be out there talking to people again, and I hope to see everybody in the near future and all of us being safe and well. Thank you for all the work that the third sector does in Ceredigion in supporting all of us and in making sure that everybody who needs that support is getting it. It's been no more important than during this last year, but it will continue to be important. Felly, diolch am eich holl waith. Thank you for all your work. And if you get a chance to vote, and I really hope you do, that you do vote for me and for Plaid Cymru in the election on Thursday, May the 6th.
The closing comments I'd like to make is that we've had the same government run by the same leading party, Welsh Labour, for 20 odd years in Wales, and I think Mid and West Wales has often been overlooked, and a lot of people feel forgotten about up here. And I think we hear about the South and we hear about the North, but how often do we hear about Mid and West? And I think it's time for change. Time for change here in Ceredigion, time for a new voice, some new energy, and I'm absolutely committed to doing that if I get elected on the 6th of May.
Yeah, just that we, as I stated to start with, we are just normal everyday people where Freedom Alliance is concerned, trying to help our communities. We're people from within our communities, making sure that there is change for the better, so that for my children's future, for my future, for everybody's future. We are all volunteers, so we do this off of in our own time as much as we can, and we are just fighting for the people to hopefully get their human rights back and get things back to normal.
This election on May the 6th will decide the future of Wales for the next 5 years, a future which will be dominated by the recovery from the pandemic. By voting for the Greens on May the 6th, you are saying, I reject the conservatism we have seen from London, headed by Boris Johnson, who doesn't care what happens, doesn't care how many people die because of something, or doesn't care on the impacts, as long as they get a Conservative government in. A rejection of Welsh Labour, who says we're going to give all carers £1,235, and then doesn't give it to the very carers who need them just because they're unpaid. Voting for the Greens allows you to say, I believe in a different Wales. I believe in a Wales where people are respected. I believe in a Wales which will be cleaner, greener and healthier for all concerned. Therefore, I ask you to consider giving me your constituency vote and the regional list vote for the Green Party on May the 6th. Thank you very much.
So, as I said just now, our priority in this election is looking ahead to the future and making sure that we prioritise and put our recovery first, not just for our health service, but for our economy and our planet as well. It means stuff like action on addressing as I said, the growing mental health crisis by making sure we have a fully 24/7 mental health service. It means supporting our local economy by replacing the business rate system and investing in our town centres to make sure that they're happy, accessible places that everyone wants to be in. And it means combating climate change, so that my generation, the generations that come after me, can enjoy and live on this planet healthily, with a £1 billion a year invested in things like tackling flooding and creating new green jobs right across Wales. I'd be really proud to have the chance to represent Ceredigion in the Senedd, and I hope I'll get that chance someday, but I can only do that with your support. So diolch yn fawr for the opportunity to talk to you today, and I hope I'll get to meet many of you soon.